Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this next business breakfast with Buckhead Church. We're so glad that you're with us, whether you are consider yourself a part of Buckhead Church or not. I know we've got a lot of you that do, and then some of you that don't as well, but we're so glad that you've decided to join us this morning. It's Monday morning as of our live recording of this. So hope you're, if Monday's the day you kick off your work week, I hope it's a great beginning. That's our hope, is that this would provide a great beginning to your work week. Leadership is difficult. In fact, in this season, leadership maybe has never been more important than it is right now. And being a great leader is not an easy feat, that is for sure. And so our hope with these business breakfasts is that we would provide some content, that we would use some of our local personalities and business leaders that we have just in the Atlanta area alone to create some great experiences like this for us to be able to connect with each other around some great content so that we might become better leaders. When you become a better leader, when I become a better leader, everyone around us wins. We become better dads, better moms, better friends, obviously better bosses, better employees. It really is, it's a win-win for everyone around us. And so that's our hope with these. We've got a lot of people in the chat today, which is very exciting. Lauren Jackson is with us this morning. Good morning, Lauren. Joey Odom. What's up, Joey? Daniel Thomas. Hello. Brett Gorney's with us. Fibia G or G. I would love to have the last name G, just so that people could say, "What up, G?" when they see me. Good morning, Jeff Moore. Heidi, hello. E. Darby, a past colleague with our speaker this morning. Rachel Ray. Hello, Rachel. Brandon Ellis. We've got Deborah with us. Nancy. If you would, give us your name. Tell us where you work, what organization you're a part of. If you're not currently working or with someone, you don't have to worry about that. But we do want to give away a couple of things. This morning, I'm going to be interviewing David Butler. David was the VP of Innovation for the Coca-Cola company. And while he was at Coca-Cola, David wrote this book called Design to Grow: How Coca-Cola Learned to Combine Scale and Agility. Big companies have figured out scale, but oftentimes big companies lose the ability to be agile. And in this season, agility is increasingly important. And so if you're a small size business, if you are self-employed, building your own business, scale is something that you're probably trying to figure out. How do you scale? And if you work for a larger corporation, a larger company, you're probably trying to figure out how you can stay agile in a season like this. And David's going to help us understand that today in this interview that we're doing with him. But we do want to give away a couple of these books. And so if you would, give us your name, tell us what company you're with, what organization you're with. And at the end of this, I'll come back after the interview and we will let you know who has won these books. David is now, the Chief Growth Officer for Kids 2. And so I'm currently sitting right here at 3336 Peachtree Road, which is where Buckhead Church, our building, is located. And just right down the street in Tower Place is the home of Kids 2, the worldwide headquarters of Kids 2. And the interview that I did with David, we did at his office right around the corner. So he is an Atlanta resident, and some would say an Atlanta legend as well. Hey, let me tell you the other thing that we're doing for this particular business breakfast that we're going to try to do going forward. What we've heard from so many of you is that these have provided great discussion topics for you and your team at work, for you and some of your coworkers, some of your employees at work. And so we want to make that as easy as possible. And so one of the things that we're going to provide with your registration is some discussion questions that you can use to discuss this content with your team. And so our hope would be that you would share this. We'll make sure that the link is available in the next day or so. You can find all of our past business breakfasts at our YouTube channel for Buckhead Church. And so make sure you subscribe to that. And we will send you the discussion questions that you can use with this interview, with this content for today. So we'll provide those at the end as well. If you are new with us and you're not on our mailing list, we want to make sure that you get the discussion questions, that you're aware of the next business breakfast that's happening and all the things that are happening around Buckhead Church. So go to buckheadchurch.org/new, buckheadchurch.org/new. We'll make sure to put that link in the chat. And let us know you're here. Let us know that you are new to Buckhead Church. We've got a gift that we actually want to send you as well when you go and fill out that link. And so make sure that you do that, particularly those of you that are not currently on our mailing list, those of you that maybe are new to Atlanta or maybe are new to Buckhead Church. Let me tell you about the next one. We're doing in late October. It was probably 2 or 3 months ago. We asked you in the chat, hey, who would you like to hear from? And a number of you mentioned Ed Bastian, the current CEO of Delta Airlines. And so we are recording that interview in the next week with Ed Bastian that we'll release at our next business breakfast in late October. Ed Bastian, obviously with Delta Airlines, they are at the crosshairs of the COVID-19 global pandemic that we're in the middle of right now because of the way the travel industry has been disrupted. And I've heard from numerous people, a couple of people actually that are on the board of Delta, that Ed's leadership through all of this has been exemplary. And so that's going to be a fantastic interview to get to talk to Ed about leading during difficult times, how to lead well during crisis, something that all of us are trying to figure out how to do. So you're not going to want to miss that one. But make sure you're signed up. Make sure you're registered. If you go to our website, you can go ahead and register for the next one. But we want to make sure that you're on our mailing list, that you're a part of everything that's happening over the next couple of months. And so go to buckheadchurch.org/new to let us know that you are here. And I do want to highlight 2 things that are coming up. We're trying to provide great experiences, both in person, but mainly virtual experiences, particularly during this season. We've got 2 of them that are coming up. If you're a parent or maybe hope to be a parent someday, or even an aunt, an uncle, grandfather, grandparent, grandmother, we've got a great event called the Parent Summit that we are launching for the next month. And we've created a bunch of content on how to have some difficult conversations with your kids, how to manage screens with your kids, how to handle virtual school with your kids, how to handle a lot of the emotional challenges that this season has brought, whether it's anxiety, depression, and we are putting all of that on one website and giving it away for free. All you have to do is register for it at Parent Summit, for the Parent Summit. That's on our website. And then secondly, if you're married, or even if you're dating someone or hope to be married someday, we're providing a great and easy date night for you. We're calling it Buckhead Church's Date Night In, and it's coming up just in a week or so. And we want to make sure that you're ready for that. 2 weeks. Thanks, Brittany. No, it's coming up when? October 2nd. She held up the 2. I didn't know if she was giving me the peace sign or in 2 weeks. But October 2nd is the date. That's this weekend. So make sure that you're available for that. Make sure you're ready for that. Make sure you're signed up for that, because it's going to be an easy way to connect with that special someone in your life. Make sure you go to buckheadchurch.org/new and let us know that you are new. So discussion questions at the end. Make sure to tell us who you are. Tell us that you're here, and we'll give some away at the end. Let's see. We got loads of people here already. That's fantastic. So Deanne is here. Deanne in the ATL. Nancy Crawford, Veterans Empowerment Organization. Fantastic. We've got Ept Nipip with Metas Consulting. We've got Tom Bergen with B2B Equity Partners. Fantastic. Jovial Health Coaches. Hi, Hanny Berger with Joyvial Network of Health Coaches. That's a great name. I got it. Joyvial. We've got Sandy Deloniga. I hope I'm saying that correctly, like Dahlonega, Georgia. Voiceover artist. Sandy, glad you're with us. Good morning from Philadelphia, Lori Weatherwalks. And, Everett, you dropped the Everett in there. Thank you so much. It was E. Darby originally, here this morning with us as well. So we've got loads of people. Allison just dropped in from Warner Media News and Sports. So glad that you're with us, and I'm really excited about this interview with David Butler. And I'll kick it to that right now. Make sure to stay for the very end where we drop the questions and give away a couple of these books. Here's the interview with David Butler. Well, good morning, everybody. We're right here in the middle of Atlanta, Georgia, the headquarters. David, these are the headquarters?
Yeah.
The headquarters, the worldwide headquarters for Kids 2. This is David Butler. David is the Chief Growth Officer for Kids 2. You mind telling us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Clay, let me say, first of all, it's great to be here. So thank you.
We're
great
glad
to see
you're
you
here.
personally and
That's right.
professionally here. So, background. So born and raised in Florida, moved to Atlanta, Georgia after I lost my first job. First job out of school, I got fired, and I learned a big lesson that actually has helped me throughout my whole career. And anyway, moved to Atlanta.
And what was the lesson?
Yeah, to have a plan B. So
That's huge.
I've had a plan B the rest of my years. Anyway, lived in Atlanta, moved to New York, back to Atlanta, and worked for Coke, and then traveled the world, went to 40 countries and so forth. So
Wow.
Lived a short time in Mexico City, but yeah.
I was telling you before we started talking, you've got such an interesting, you're this combination of design and art, I guess. You seem like a creative type, but then you have this strategy, business side of you as well. What's the secret to marrying those two for you?
I don't know. It's the way I think about design is that it's that blend of art and science. Most people think about it as art, and so I used to teach. So like the difference between the way I would define design and art is completely subjective. So an artist paints a painting, and you buy it because you like the way it looks. That artist could care less if you actually like it or not. They just paint it because they want to. It makes them feel like something. Design is purposeful. So this chair, the chair you're sitting in, if it didn't support your weight, it wouldn't be good, right? So design is always purposeful, and that's why I see the big opportunity in business is to link the power of design to growing the business, and that's what I focus on for most of my career.
Wow. We'll get into some of that because I feel like there's so much for every single one of us to take away in that. But can you tell us a little bit about Kids 2 before we go any further about this
Kids
company?
2, people always ask me, what does the 2 stand for? So at Kids 2, we believe in two things, what we call the bright futures and tiny wins. So we think that any parent, anybody has a opportunity to reach their bright future, whatever that means to them. But we think the way to get there as a parent is through a series of tiny wins, tiny steps, to get there. So our purpose is to help parents create more tiny wins to help them reach their bright future.
Wow.
So Kids 2 makes, we have 3 brands, Ingenuity, Baby Einstein, and Bright Starts, and we make basically anything you need as an early stage parent or as a new parent for your kid, whether it's developmental toys or we call it gear, but like bassinets, high chairs, that kind of thing. So
we've got 5 little kids, and so we've just gotten rid of.
You're our target.
We are. We have gotten rid of it all, though. I knew my wife was serious that we were done when she started getting rid of the baby gear. So, but we are grateful. We've used a lot of your products. So thanks for what you do. You've been here for
just over 3 years.
Just over 3 years. While you were at Coca-Cola, that was a big season professionally for you. I think the first time I remember hearing about you is I saw you on the cover of Fast Company, which, by the way, what a baller picture of you. Great picture. That was 2010?
Yeah, about that, 2010. Yeah.
Okay. So while you were at Coca-Cola, you wrote this book called, I love the Coca-Cola Red. That's a very specific, purposeful red, yes. Designed to Grow, how Coca-Cola learned to combine scale and agility, and how you can too. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about today because everyone is experiencing, I don't know, we're in this, odd season where we're all experiencing so much of the same thing. So every company every business leader, every leader of education, even my wife is leading in our home right now with 4 kids in virtual school. Everyone's had to use that word pivot, that they're pivoting from what they were doing to what what they hope to be doing. And that is what agility, that's a lot of what agility is, which is what you've written about. So I want to drill in on that a little bit and talk about agility. You want to just start by defining it? How do you see that term?
Yeah, I'll talk about it as a business. So I think you can apply any of this to your personal life as well, which you just talked about. But so all of us need to be agile because you never know what's coming, and especially if you're a parent and you have kids, you just never know, So
keep you on your toes.
Exactly. But from a business perspective, it's interesting because smaller companies struggle with scale.
Yeah.
Larger companies struggle with agility. So if you're in a startup, you're an entrepreneur and you start up a company, the task is to get to a repeatable business model that you can then scale.
Yeah.
So you have nothing but agility. You have,
if you have nothing else, you have agility.
Yeah, you have nothing but agility at that point. And
That's right.
But the task is to get to something that you can scale, and that means you have to simplify your business, standardize it, so you can scale it. And so that's scaling. But when you've scaled your company, and I worked at Coke, and that company
Coke had scaled.
Yeah, so Coke is in 207 countries. There's only 208 countries in the world. Basically, you can buy a Coke in any city on the planet. They make about 1 million of something a minute. They're like a lot of products, 1 million of something a minute. So we'll talk for 30 minutes, it's 30 million something, So that kind of scale, when is not a problem for Coke, but agility, turning that ship is another thing. So, but while we were there, we were able to actually connect the way the company designed in the broadest sense to help them be more agile. And so the book is I'm not trying to pitch the book, but the book is about how Coke started as a startup. People don't think about that, but they had to scale up to a certain size, and they used design a certain way to scale. They used a completely different approach to design to create agility across the company. So that's what the book's about.
Well, I love the way the book starts, that you were feeling this thing while you were at Coca-Cola, and you wrote this 3-page manifesto, and then I'm thumbing through the book, trying to get through it to be ready for today, and I get to the end of the book, and you included the 3-page manifesto, which I thought was a really great move, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I had so many people after that. So I mentioned that in the article, that Fast Company article, and then I traveled all over the world, and people had asked me for that manifesto everywhere I went. And so I asked the company if it was okay if I included that, and so that's why it's in there. So.
Well, take us back to that moment, maybe just before writing it. What were you feeling, and how was Coca-Cola struggling with agility in that season?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, so at the time and now, every company needs agility. So I'll come back to that in a second, but I'll give you sort of a non-Coke example. We were talking about this right before we started here, but I think I would venture to say most people have never heard of Zoom until recently, right? Until the pandemic.
Now it's a verb.
And now it's Zoom. I looked the other day. Zoom is now worth more than the 7 biggest airlines combined.
Wow.
And if you think about it, Zoom is about a 10-year-old company, and now they're worth more than that. So what they have focused on is scale, and they've reached scale now, which is interesting. But if you flip the other side of that, United, Delta, what are they doing? They're trying to figure out how to be agile because they don't want to go out, right? So it's this tension that I think is just interesting as a business person. So anyway, to answer your question, at Coke, when I came to the company, it was in 2004. Early 2000s, they had just started struggling with, not struggling, but people were more aware of the amount of sugar they were drinking through soft drinks and other things. And so obesity was a big topic, and just the need to create more agility across their portfolio of products, because the Red Coke is what we used to call it, but Coca-Cola was accounted for the lion's share of their profits. So they knew they needed something beyond that, and they had been working on this before I was there, obviously. But anyways, but how do you do that? How do you pivot? How do you move when it's a 100-year-old company when you've been doing one thing so well for so long? So the way we introduced a different way of designing, and when I say design, we were talking about this before.
Yeah, define that word.
Yeah, design. Everything is designed, and I used to do talks around the world, and I would use a double negative and say we cannot not design. Everything is designed. So this table was designed, this room was designed, this environment was designed, this building was designed, this street corner was designed, and go on and on. But everything is designed. People don't think about it that way. They look at a Ferrari and say that's designed, but that book is not designed. But in fact, everything is. And so the value of good design is that it makes your life better or your business grow. The power of bad design is the opposite. It makes your life not better, and it drives down your business. So, but the way you design is dependent on if you're in that scale mode or if you're in the if you're designing for agility.
Oh wow, I see.
When you're looking to scale, you design things, you simplify things and standardize things because less is more in that case. And you think about the Coca-Cola bottle, they had, or Coke itself, for 70 years, they had one product, one package, one price, it was a nickel, the color red, Spencerian script, and they scaled that. And that's how you do it.
For 70 years.
70 years. Think about that. If you had
Think about the focus for 70 years.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what you need, to scale a business. But the opposite, or it's not the opposite, but a different approach is needed. So the metaphor I always come back to, and we use it inside of Coke and then outside, is Legos. So if you think about Legos, there are components that you put together to create something. So if you just think about that, the fancy term for that is modular design. Designing modules that fit together, and there's complexity and science behind all this stuff. But anyway, if you think about what you're designing as a series of components or parts that fit together versus one-off thing, that's how you get more agility. Let me give you an example. So at Coke, and it sounds simple, but think about all the cities that Coke is in, and when you walk into, maybe not now, but when you walk into a convenience store, which is where their highest margin is, so they make a lot of money through that what they sell in convenience stores. They have pieces of point of sale, it's communication, so a poster here and so forth. Think about Coke is in every city on the planet, and when I came to Coke, the way that they were approaching that, this is just one example, the way they were approaching that is design each poster as a one-off. So you go around the world, think of the math, all these posters being designed by a designer, then printed by this printer and all that. So long story short, what we did is we standardized and created templates for those posters that could be customized around the world. But we looked at the different pieces of a poster as individual components, created an app, put those components in the app, and then locally you could design that, you could design it or reframe it any way you wanted to for your market. Anyway, we did that in the first couple of years I was there, and we saved the company over $500 million just doing that. Wow. So that designing with a more modular approach and looking at your company, everything you do in that way can really create efficiency and again, agility.
So in this season, when we're all trying to figure out what do we pivot to, what's the way we can meet the new customer demand, because that's the big challenge right now, is that what we're needing as humans, what we're desiring as humans has changed so much. So can you help people think through what are some questions you would ask yourself? What are some ways that you would challenge your own thinking in your company to think about how to add more agility through, whether it be modular design?
Great question, Clay. And you can tell I've thought about this a lot.
Yeah, you were ready to answer like
lived it.
Halfway through the question.
No, it's pretty easy to understand. So, and again, I'll go back to the Lego metaphor. So the reason why I use metaphor, I've used that, asked this question around the world. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of Legos. And every country I've ever been in, everyone knows a Lego. So that's why you can use this example. But so think about Legos. You can buy the starter kit of Legos, and each of those blocks are individual blocks, and they fit together the same way. So there's pegs on the bottom; they fit the same way. Now, if you want to buy a set of Harry Potter, if you're into Harry Potter, you buy Harry Potter blocks, and you can add those to your starter kit easily because they all connect the same way. So the way to apply that to your business is think about what's fixed and what's flexible. So if you think of that starter kit as fixed, the primary colors, that starter kit, those are fixed. And then, think about what could be flexible. The Harry Potter, bricks, that's a flex. You could use Harry Potter, if you stop liking Harry Potter, you get rid of those and buy Minecraft or whatever else, other kind of bricks. So if you think about your business that way, and I'll bring it down in a second, but so think about, when the coronavirus hit and everyone had to leave the office space, how do you keep your culture alive, working from home and distributed like that? And every business is still asking themselves that, So in that part, if you think about how to keep your culture engaged or your people engaged, what's fixed? What do we have to keep doing to keep that culture, our unique culture, alive? But what's flexible? To going back to your question, just if you think about just a list of what's fixed and what's flexible, the key on the flexible part is to think about more is more. Like let's just try a lot of things because some things aren't going to work. The Harry Potter bricks are going to work one day, but then nobody cares about Harry Potter, get rid of those.
It's hard to imagine, but that day seems like it will come at some point.
But the fix are your culture in this case. It's fixed. A Coke, red. We're never going to get rid of red. Like that's fixed. So just as an exercise, almost like a brainstorming exercise, when you get to a problem that you're facing as a business, it could be your supply chain, it could be anything. What's fixed and what can be flexible, and let's just try some stuff. So
that's super helpful. When you wrote the 3-pager, you literally just sat down one day and said, all right, enough of all this stuff swirling around. I'm going to put this down on paper. Talk us through the emotion of that or the feeling of that.
Yeah, first of all, most people ask me, did you watch Jerry Maguire? And for, like Gen Z, millennials won't know what that movie is, but anyway, Jerry Maguire. That's basically what the character did in that movie. And so to be honest, Jerry Maguire hadn't come out yet, so I didn't get this idea and then go do that. Honestly, I just felt like there was a huge opportunity to think about design. So my job was vice president of design there at the time. And my job was to connect the power of design to the company. But the more and more I got to know the people inside the company, this is after a couple months, Clay, so I wasn't there that long. Most people just thought about design at the surface level. Just, the color of that book is red, not at a deeper way. How do we actually connect that to drive our business? And I wrote that 3-pager just to challenge the notion of how people thought about design and just show an opportunity. We can connect this power to Coke and drive the company leveraging design. And again, I was maybe naive at the time, but I sent that out to everyone I knew. I emailed that to everyone that I'd met inside of Kids 2, CEO, everybody. And I could have gotten fired or tried to or move the needle. And of course, the second happened. So
it gave you more influence. It seems it gave you a
and it was a vision. So and honestly, took longer than I thought it would. But 10 years later, we were operating at that level. So.
Wow. I love the idea of asking those questions between what is fixed and what can be changed in regard to agility. What were some things that you tried over the next 10 years at Coca-Cola that maybe
Great question.
helped flesh this out?
Tried a lot of things, so we could talk for another hour if you want, but I'll give you probably the best example. I can give you another one after this if you want, but the best example is I had been at Coke for about 10 years, and the CEO asked me if I would focus on innovation. And at least at that company, it's not really a request. It's sort of like, you will focus on innovation now. So I just said, okay, boss, what, I didn't call him boss, but anyway.
It's good for the story, though.
Yeah, it's a good story. What are you really looking for? At the time, Muhtar Kent was the CEO of the company and chairman. And I just said, really, Muhtar, what do you feel like we need in terms of innovation that we don't have? And the short answer was, could we do what startups do? And so big companies like that, and they continue to, look at companies that seem like they come out of nowhere. Airbnb, at the time, Airbnb and Twitter, these are two companies that were just really growing quickly. And he said, we have so much power, meaning presence and brand and all that stuff. How can we do what they do and maybe even better? And so my job then was to figure out how founders, found startups, create startups, and how they work, how they're funded, just all that. And so I created a small little team, and we did that. We went to every startup community on the planet, major startup communities, India, China, every country, and just dug in, and we learned everything we could about how to create startups. Here comes the pivot. So then we thought, and this is my idea, so I take all the credit for it. We thought, we could just hire great repeat founders. If they've started a startup and they went really well.
You did it once, come do it again.
We're going to hire you, put you in Coke, and just do it here. Easy peasy, right? So the problem with that is again, once you've reached scale, you've created, generally most companies, they standardize things like IT systems, HR systems, finance systems, all that stuff. And you can't just do what you want. You have to work within that system.
You got to do it the Coke way.
Yeah, or whatever the company is. Yeah. And so, but founders, they don't do that. I mean, they're there to actually find their business model while it's in progress. They don't have a business model. They're finding that product market fit in their business model. So So we brought in a bunch of founders, and they started doing what they do, and they kept bumping up against IT, finance, HR, that we just don't do it that way here, and that kind of thing. And so had to fire all of them, and then we actually fired them. They set up their businesses, and we funded those businesses outside of Coke, so then they could operate, how they needed to operate, not within the Coke system.
So if, we've got all kinds of people that are here today. We've got people that are running small businesses, family-owned businesses, medium-sized businesses, and then some people that do work in large companies. So for those people, what advice would you have for them on that moment when you're trying to figure out, hey, is this something we should start, or is this something we should start outside of us and let it work its way in? What do you tell them?
Yeah, I think what you just said, I think, is really insightful. And most people don't think that way. So in other words, when you're inside of an organization, you never think that you can actually work outside, you can partner outside of the organization to create something. And it sounds really easy, but again, most people don't think it. They think we have to develop it. If you have a large ego and you want credit, then that's a whole other story. But if you're willing to let that go and partner, work with people outside, I think every business can learn with that. And that's actually the platform that we set up at Coke. We call it Coca-Cola Founders. And that's what we would do. We would take identify big problems that the company was faced with. I can give you an example if you want, but big problem that the company was faced with, go find a startup founders that were interested in that problem, not fixing it for Coke or anything like that. They were just interested in the same problem. And then we would partner with them. We would fund their company or invest in their company and become their first customer. So they could sort of test and learn on Coke and with a solution that we really needed, but we would have a very hard time doing it inside of Coke. So,
what's the example?
Yeah, many examples, but one of them was at Coke or any consumer products company, out of stocks is one of their biggest challenges. So Clay, if you go to that store on the corner and buy the last Coke Zero, then that's bad for that retailer, it's bad for Coke, bad for you. You're kind of upset. Why don't you have more Coke Zero? The challenge, though, because Coke is a scale, the guy or woman that comes to replenish that stock comes on, let's say, Tuesday and Thursday. Well, if you buy the last one on Sunday, we got a couple of days when it's out of stocks, and the retailer can't do anything about it. It's just he's out of stocks. But that's lost sales for Coke, and think about the scale. That's a giant problem for Coke. So we found a early stage startup, 2 people. They had 2 employees. And they were really focused on how to create. I don't know if you remember this company, but TaskRabbit for corporate. So in other words, outsource. How do you get temporary staff on demand? How do you do that? And there are already a couple examples of that, but they want to do that for companies so that if whoever, Home Depot, anybody needed staff on demand, you could have someone there within an hour. You don't have to hire them or all that. But how do you do that at scale? So they developed a business model around that. Wow. They applied it. The first use case, the first application of that business model was to Coke. So that if the retailer saw that there was out of stocks, they could go on the app, get someone there to restock the shelf. They're already approved by Coke and all that stuff. And think of that, the speed and agility that created. So that company is doing great. Anyway, so that company is called Winolo, but by the way. But anyway, that's an example of the model that we created. So going back to what you said before, I think if anybody can think, if we can't get it done inside the company, right, how can we partner with somebody to get it done? And again, people stop there. I think they don't actually see that through. So.
Wow, that's a great example, and I love that. Makes a lot of sense how the power of agility for a big company like that. Let's talk about today, what people are experiencing now. Maybe even your experience here at Kids 2. I guess how long has it been? You said
3+ years.
3 years that you've been here. You're now the chief growth officer. I would imagine when all this hit, everybody was a little scared, but it seems like you all have done pretty well through this. What are some ways that you've applied these agility principles to this landscape we're in now?
Well, one thing what's interesting about this industry, and I didn't know anything about this industry before I came to Kids 2, but I've got 3 children, 3 daughters, and so I knew what it meant to be a parent, but I didn't know anything about, let's say, the parent industry. And what's interesting is that when you become a parent, you know this 5 times, but when you become a parent, the first time, you sort of reset in many of the things that you think about or assumptions you made about your life. I'll never drive this. I'll never live there. I'll never eat this.
All the things you said before.
I'll never eat SpaghettiOs. I'll never drive a minivan. I'll never live in Alpharetta, whatever,
right. I'll never let this child control my life.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, but from a brand perspective, you sort of reset and you reconsider all these brands that are now more relevant to you than ever before.
Wow.
There's not many times in your life where you actually do that. So we study that. We, as a company, we study that and that sort of reset. So what we've done before the pandemic, I'll give you an example. Before the pandemic, we have we call it our Global Insights team here, but they did a study right before, late last year around the differences between Gen Z parents and millennials. So right now we're cresting at the height of from a generation standpoint, the height of the millennial parent. So there are as many millennial parents today than there ever have been before. Wow. But the next generation is right behind them. So Gen Z started in 1997. So if you were born after 1997, you are considered a Gen Z, right? So the Gen Z parent is about 20, 21 now. So that's the next wave that's coming. Wow. As it turns out, Gen Z people who become parents are just different than millennials. So we study that and we group those into 5 different big shifts we see coming to our industry and so forth. So just as one example, millennials are, everybody knows this, but millennials are, and I hate to classify, but just in this conversation, that's what it is.
It's helpful for the conversation, for sure.
But millennials are typically on social media 3 hours a day, on average, 3 hours a day. Gen Z are on social media, but they're actually much prefer streaming content. So on YouTube, 50% of their day, let's say. So for us as a business, we have to look at that and say, we sell products, but without the content that can be streamed to support those content or characters or all that, we miss out on 50% of what our parents are going to be doing, streaming content. So we created a whole new content studio to develop new content around our products just for that. So we'd be ready with the product or with the content on Netflix, on whatever. Wow. And so we just did that in the past year. So again, the way we try to do it is just study what the next generation is going to look like and then redesign or pivot our business to meet that. So that all happened before the pandemic, but during the pandemic, we started studying how the buying patterns of people. Everything shifted to e-commerce for sure, but with the pandemic and then the economic downfall, value became the equation. So we started looking at everything in our portfolio and shifting around more of a value equation. So anyway, to answer your question, just really listening to who you're talking to or selling to or whatever is key, and we've created a whole team around that. So.
And that's part of what you're responsible for is the growth officer. Yeah. Tell us more about that team. What does that mean to have a team that is just listening?
Yeah, so they do a lot of things, but we work with a lot of outside research partners to look at big macro trends. And again, we do a study around the world once a year. We look at we classify. You think of parent as a new parent as a new parent, but there are 5 different types of attitudes that parents have, and we study each of those and track those around the world and make sure that they're either changing or not, and know that. We test products. Anything that we do, we get user feedback before we go to market, just so we're not missing anything. So all that sits inside the way we think about design, which is what we call, or a lot of people call, user-centered design. So we actually design for the user, not for anything else. So we need to make sure that if we think you're going to enjoy that chair, Clay, we would ask you, do you enjoy that chair? And before we produce it and put it into market. So anyway, insights for us is really key to everything we do here.
Yeah. You talked about those 5 shifts that we're seeing in buying patterns of the next generation. Yeah. Everybody at different levels is trying to figure out what is this going to be like, not just on the other side of this, but what is the market going to be like in 5 years, and how do we make sure that we're reaching out to new client base, new customer base? Yeah. Give us a couple of examples other than the one you mentioned about spending more time streaming. Any other examples that come to mind of big shifts that you're seeing in these new parent buying patterns?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple. So one is not necessarily a shift between millennials and Gen Z parents, but and this is the one that's consistent between both of them. Just authenticity, brand authenticity. So saying who you are and being true to who that is critical especially with Gen Zs. And so, in other words, they don't. They're not a previous generation. They don't buy the advertising. They look at how the company operates, who they are, and then they buy from companies that they respect. So getting really clear around your purpose, like your real purpose, like why do you exist, and then talk about that and being very authentic with that. is really key. That's one of them. Another one is tech-enabled. So, Gen Z grew up with, they're wired from the beginning, natives, digital natives and all that stuff. So, what we've done, I took a page out of Coke's book and we set up a venture investing platform here at Kids 2 where we invest in companies that are trying to reinvent parenthood. And so these are, again, entrepreneurs that are becoming parents and they're looking at some of the same challenges that you and I have looked at, for years. I get into Uber and they don't have a car seat. Why not? We can put a man on the moon, but we can't get a car seat in Uber, And so, they're solving that. Or, another company that we invested in is called Goodbye Gear, and they make it really easy to sell all your stuff. So all that stuff your wife got rid of, imagine if a company could come collect it all, put it on a platform and sell it for you and do all that for you. So they saw a big need in that, big challenge with that, and they solved it. So anyway, we're investing and partnering with early stage companies that are solving problems that, again, we don't focus on, but we need to be aware of. So
when you think about, as you're so much of your job is predicting, getting out in front, what do you see on the other side of this pandemic? What are you telling your teams right now?
Yeah, well, not this convenient way to bring it back to the beginning, but we're being more agile than ever before, and test and learn. The way that startups work is they create a list of assumptions. They assume, first of all, identify a problem, and then all the assumptions that we assume that could solve the problem. Then they just start trying to prove those assumptions wrong, and they get down to something that actually is a solution and scale it. So what we've done and continue to do is a lot of what we call test and learn. So some things we don't know exactly what it's going to be like on the other side of this, whatever that is, but we want to start putting some tests out there in the market just to see. So we have the way we think about our portfolio is I won't give you the strategy, but there's a quadrant, literally a quadrant in our framework that is dedicated to test and learn. So we're just there to test and learn. We're not there to create a big business. We just want to see what happens. So we don't invest a lot of time and energy and money into it. It's just a test, and that's very purposeful. So we've just continued. We've done more of that, and we're planning to do more of that because we just don't know what that's going to look like or what it's going to look like on the other side. Having said that, I would say that this industry is resilient. So, people have babies no matter what the economy is, pandemic, whatever. So we're doing quite well and very happy about that. So.
I love the quote. You put that Mike Tyson quote in your book that you don't really know what is inside of you. You don't really know what you're about until you get punched in the mouth.
Yeah, no, so everyone has a plan until you get hit in the mouth. And
there it is.
I just love that quote. And that's Mike Tyson, not me. But and that's the thing. Like even with all that, all the greatest plans, something comes out, pandemic happens, and we couldn't plan for that.
Yeah.
So just I think this whole idea of agility is just embracing that from the beginning and learning how to be more agile and purposely being more agile is prepares you for times like this. So.
What's something you're testing and learning right now? Can you give a current example?
Yeah. Let's see. We are, so there's a lot of categories inside of the what we call gear, but bassinets, high chairs, and so forth. And a lot of those categories haven't been, there hasn't been a lot of innovation in some of those categories going way back when I bought our first high chair, right? So so we're testing and learning in some of those categories, just again, not trying to disrupt the category per se, but if that happened, we'd be okay with that. But really, just challenging some of the assumptions in some of the categories that we compete in.
Anything COVID related? Anything?
No, not directly related to COVID. But again, I would say that we have really looked at the price value equation of our products because we know, or we're planning for an economic, a global economic, downturn for the next couple of years. So we have looked at everything we do like that. So.
Can we talk about you as a leader a little bit? Your career feels like you were, I don't know the way it felt at Coke, but when I saw you on the cover of Fast Company, I thought, gosh, it seems like you were, it seemed like you had arrived in that moment. Tell us about your leadership journey and what you're learning about being a leader at work and what that means for you.
Yeah, I mentioned this in the book, but I really do believe this, and it's been powerful for me. So for me, I always come back to this. It sounds really simple, but it's never about me. It's always about we. So that's how I sum it up. But I think for me personally, opportunity I've gone into my whole career, I've always thought about how to work with the team.
Yeah.
If I might be the leader, tag you're it kind of thing. I might be the leader, but that doesn't mean I'm the smartest person in the room. And so I've always approached it that way and try to be as inclusive, co-create versus I'm the super designer, give it to me, I'll design it and let you know what it looks like later. Co-create together. I just think you can, that principle of co-creation I think is just so powerful. And so I've always looked at it that way. So, part of that is being more vulnerable with people. I made a mistake. I might be the leader, but I made a mistake. Vulnerable and just honestly just being transparent and opening up with people and being real. So that's who I am. Whether I'm at work or anywhere else. And I think that's for me personally. That's just the only way I know how to do it. So.
The one of the things that seems like a challenge about your role is you've got this. You majored in graphics. That's your degree. You spent time as a designer, which a lot of that is sitting in your own space doing work. But then you get to be an executive like where you are now, and I would imagine your whole day could be taken up with meetings.
Zoom, yeah. Yeah.
So how do you, what has that tension been like for you? How do you maintain that space in your schedule for you to be able to think, for you to be able to, to be a strategic thinker, you have to have time to think. And I would imagine there's some kind of margin that you've created.
It's not my idea. In fact, Andy did a sermon on this one time. People talk about how you spend your life, and it's really how you spend your time. So for me, I'm diligent about my time, and I block out time in the day so I can think or just do what I need to do. But I think just in general, how you manage your time is critical to your success, happiness, all that. So if I don't manage it, I often have meetings from 7 to 7, period. But if I don't purposely manage, the moments of my life, I'm not mindful. I'm not in the moment. I'm always thinking about something else, and I'm definitely not enjoying my time or my life.
How are you doing right now doing that?
I'm good. As long as we end at 1:30, I'm good. I'm kidding.
That's great. Let's do some. Could we do some rapid response?
Sure.
I didn't give you these ahead of time. This is real. So give us the last couple of months, the book that you've enjoyed more than any other, maybe even that you've recommended to others.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so I'm a huge jazz vinyl collector. So I love vintage jazz music, vinyl, right? So there's a brilliant pianist. His name is Bill Evans, and I won't go into that whole thing. But anyway, I'm reading his autobiography, and I don't know if I'd recommend it. It actually helps me go to sleep. So, but it's interesting. So anyway.
Wow. All right. That's good. What about Netflix? Last show you binged on Netflix?
Top Chef, sorry, what is it called? Chef's Table. What is it? I can't remember. Anyway, Chef's Table, maybe. Anyway, they came out with a barbecue version of that. I'm a vegetarian, but anyway, being in the South, I know about barbecue. And anyway, I love cooking shows. I like to cook. And so anyway, that's the last one.
That's cool. Favorite restaurant in Atlanta?
Gosh, probably not one you'd guess, but Taqueria del Sol is like my go-to. Yep. It's so consistent,
solid,
laid back. I love it.
It's great. Most fun thing that you've been able to do with your daughters lately?
Just see them. Actually, to be honest, with COVID, is you take these things for granted. But my daughter, I've told you this before. My oldest daughter is at UGA, and she called me. This is about 3 weeks ago. I'm on a Zoom. I'm in a meeting, and she calls me and said, "I just tested positive for COVID. I got to come home right now." So she comes home and you adjust, So anyway, but I took care of her for those 2 weeks of quarantine, and I told her she actually apologized several times. I'm sorry you have to do all this for me. And I told her I'm a dad. I like taking care of you, So I really enjoyed that.
Oh, that's cool. That's sweet. How's she doing now?
She's great. Yeah,
she's good.
Yeah,
good. Awesome. Hey, last question I'd love to ask you is just in this, this season it's been so many different things to everybody, so many different kind of challenges, but at the same time, there's a lot of joy, and joy runs on the same parallel tracks oftentimes with hard times, and so I know there's a lot of good that's come out of this season too, but if you were to say anything to leaders, what would be your challenge or encouragement to them during the season?
Yeah, for me personally, as a leader, I'd say I've really focused on being more mindful, just being in the moment and, living in that moment. So really enjoying this time together with you, Clay. Like I'm not thinking about anything, just you and me right now, and enjoying this and putting everything I have into it. So, with the economy and the health crisis, I mean, like people say it all the time, but life is short and all that. You never know, right? So like for me personally, I've just really focused on being more mindful. And then, as a leader, working with people, you mentioned this before, a lot of people are just struggling right now. So it might be financially or health-wise, but also just, homeschooling your kid or just making sure your kid's not crawling under the table while they're supposed to be in school. These are hard. You have to work and be a teacher at the same time. It's just hard. So for me, whenever we have a meeting, I don't care if we have a short meeting, long meeting, I always start off and just ask people how they're doing. How are you doing? I mean, like personally, how are you doing? And I think that, again, this is not a brilliant thing to say, but just checking in on people every day just to show that like you actually care. You care about, what they're going through. And that's what I do, and I think it's critical. I like when that happens to me, and and so anyway, I do that every day.
I love that. Well, because we bring ourselves to work. We bring all of that. We bring our tough relationship or tough situation or all our home life. It all comes with us. So I think that's a great challenge for leaders. I love the mindfulness idea, just to be able to not look forward or not look past, but to be able to really enjoy this moment right now. So thank you. Thanks for being a part of our church for so long. Thanks for your influence. You've helped shape a lot of our conversation lately for sure. So thank you for that. And thanks for this conversation today.
Thanks, Clay. It's a pleasure, as always. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with David Butler. I loved seeing so many of the comments in the chat about how timely this conversation is. It certainly was timely for me. It's certainly been timely for our organization as well, as we've tried to figure out how to stay agile in an ever-changing world, a world that feels like is in constant change right now. If you want to have a discussion about this with your team, we hope that you would. We hope that you choose to do that. You can share the link of the interview as soon as we post it. And then we've also provided discussion questions for you just to make that discussion, to make that conversation as easy as possible. And we'll share all of that in the follow-up email that we send you. So be on the lookout for that, and I certainly hope that you will use this with your team. And if you have feedback for us on future speakers, future ways to make this content more accessible and more discussable, we certainly would want to hear that from you, so let us know. I want to announce the winners. We're going to send a couple of books out to you. We're going to send one to Lori Weatherwalks. Lori, congratulations. And then to J Money, who is James with Amco. James, we're going to send you a book as well, and we're going to send a book to Nancy Cranford. So coming to you, the book by David Butler called Designed to Grow, how Coca-Cola learned to combine scale and agility, and how you can do it too. So I hope that you'll enjoy that. Just a reminder of a couple things that we have coming up. We have a parent summit that we think will be really helpful for anybody, really, especially those of you that are parents. But if you're a parent, hope to be a parent someday, or if you're a grandparent, aunt, uncle, this certainly would be helpful content for you as well. So please be on the lookout for that on our website, buckheadchurch.org, as well as the Date Night In event that we have coming up on October the 2nd. You can register for that on our website as well. Just trying to make it as easy as possible for you to have a great experience with the people around you that you love and that you care for. That's one of the things that we aim to do, that we hope to do with Buckhead Church. And again, if you're new, if you're not on our mailing list and you're not getting emails from us, or if you just want to tell us that you're here, just to raise your hand and say, hey, I'm interested to know more, make sure you go to buckheadchurch.org/new and let us know that you're here. We've got another business breakfast on October 29th, just before Halloween, and this one's going to be with the CEO of Delta Airlines, Ed Bastian. The link to register for that is going to be in the follow-up email as well. So you can go ahead and register yourself, get your team registered, some other coworkers, maybe your roommate, spouse, friends, family. We hope that you'll be there on October 29th for an interview with Ed Bastian. Have a great Monday. Thanks for being with us today. We're for you, mainly because that's what we feel like we're called to do, what we're here to do, is to make sure that you know that we're for you and that God is for you. And so we're certainly grateful that you chose to be with us on this Monday morning. Hope you have a fantastic Monday. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you back here soon. See ya.